Welcome to our podcast. I completely forgot to record. No, we're getting off to a great start here. It's a pretty bad joke, yes.
He's one of those people when he starts talking, you just listen.
Don't do the inner work. Like, look at this. You're not cool unless you have a Ferrari and you have like 10 girlfriends. And then once I get off the camera, it's I fucking hate myself.
Most of this podcast is going to suck, by the way. Hello, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Murga and Podcast. I'm your host, AJ Murga. And today I have got a special guest from Oregon. A good buddy of mine goes by the name of Dustin Gilbert. How you doing, Dustin?
Awesome, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate your time and your expertise on these kinds of things.
If that's what you want to call it.
What we're going to be talking about today is the pitfall that is the manosphere. And if you don't know what the manosphere is, Google describes it as a loosely connected network of online communities and forums and influencers that promote aggressive, traditionalist, or extremist ideas about masculinity. While often marketing themselves as self-improvement, these spaces frequently push anti-feminist rhetoric, blaming women and gender equality for men's perceived societal decline, which right off the bat just sounds like a big steaming pile of horse shit, doesn't it? What comes to your mind? Because I know the manosphere, you and I are a little bit of an older generation, but like we remember a time when there was no social media. What came to mind for you when you first kind of heard of the manosphere and started doing some digging into it?
It was hard to watch just because I see it. And then, like we talked about, the more work you do, the more able to see through the bullshit that is the manosphere. And it is hard to watch because we've been through our own coping mechanisms of being a man in today's society. And like our dads were, in that era of macho, don't show any emotion, don't be a pussy, drink beer and do this, and if you don't, then you're not a man. And like the Predator and Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rambo and Rocky and all those movies and TV and back then social media, I guess. Mm-hmm. And now it's so crazy, like everything you could ever want, porn, TV, all these douchebags talking about what femininity is and masculinity is, and it's like everything. When you do the work, you can see through the bullshit that all it is, and it is hard to watch because we know what it's like going through that and how bad it does suck when you're grasping for all these different avenues to distract yourself from basically feeling. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're hitting on a lot of great topics there. And I agree completely that when you do the work, you can see through the BS. And that's exactly what a lot of this is, to simplify it as much as possible. And we'll break it down, aspect by aspect as we go through this episode. But you're right. And the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to talk with you about this specific topic is because you and I have similar backgrounds. We both come from various forms of childhood trauma. We both coped with it similarly. We both went through a lot of the same mistakes, and we did it together. We've been great friends since third grade. And so we've been there, with each other, making the same mistakes, and we've also been there for each other when we've made similar mistakes. And we've both done a lot of work in our recent life to move past that, the toxic shame that it builds up, the negative coping skills that it causes, and when you do the work to move through that and past that, you can look back and see the pitfalls that were in front of you along the way, and that's what I ultimately see with this manosphere. It is just weak, predatory men preying on other insecure. I'm not going to call them weak because most of these men are young. Their brains aren't fully formed. They're teenagers. I don't really blame a 14-year-old who thinks the manosphere might be cool because he doesn't know any better, his brain's not formed, and it won't be for another 10 to 15 years. So, but these men, if you can even call them that, they are just complete con artists and predators who basically are just feeding this insecurity in order to make a buck. And that is kind of the worst kind of people. It reminds me of people who are telemarketers, or like scam artists, I should say, who prey on elderly because the elderly maybe don't know how to work their online banking account, or so they'll call them and steal their identity and their money, right? It kind of reminds me of that kind of culture. But what comes up for you when I say some of those things?
Yeah, like yeah, I think you nailed it. It's like, oh, they don't know any better, so I'm going to teach them the way. And it reminds me of like men going through a midlife crisis.
Mm.
It's either you double down on distractions and buy a Ferrari and get a 20-year-old girlfriend, or you actually do the work that is within, not without outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is so easy to influence these younger generation, because it's like everything is on their phones, and it's everything's so flashy and easily to distract these younger kids, because everything is on their phones and everything looks so flashy, and it's like, oh look, he's getting women, and they're portraying it as something completely different than what's actually happening in their own world and their minds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we see it because it's like we've done the work,
Mm-hmm.
but they have been distracting themselves with these online stuff and this glorifying money and all this other stuff and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, basically
Well,
worldly things.
and that's distraction is I think the right word that you use for it, because that is ultimately what they're doing, and what they're using to distract themselves is placing the blame on somebody else. Blame shifting is a big part of this culture, and feeling entitled to the way that something should be, just because they're a man or just because they're white or whatever, right? It's this elitist kind of attitude without actually having to do the work to become elite. It's pretty strange to me, and I think we do see it more in younger cultures, but obviously the ones that are creating the manosphere are older men, because they're the predators of the group. But now I don't want to say more than you're comfortable with as far as your job goes and stuff like that. But I know you work at a college. I know you work with youth. Do you see any of this in your daily life firsthand? So you're speaking from experience.
Yeah, like I see it throughout. Like I said, my place I work is a small scale version of what's happening everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's every kind of person there. There's every kind of generation. I mean, through the people that work there, through the professors, through the students, there's different cultures. There's different people from different countries. And
Mm-hmm.
so you get to see it in all kinds of different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the men, is like they're putting on this front, or a lot of them are just kind of scared they don't know how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
So like we have this concert every year in the summertime, and last year it was a country concert. So all these college girls are going out in their short skirts and their dresses, cowgirls and stuff, and most of the guys didn't go. They stayed in their dorms and played Call of Duty online with each other, because it was like they're afraid. Or the ones that did go were these cocky assholes like you see on. But I mean, there is people and they're kind of in that lost gap of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I know this isn't how I'm supposed to be a man, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be that, and I don't know how to be this. So, because there's not really that many good examples and good role models for these young men, especially online. It's like you said, it's all these older predators that are going through their midlife crisis, or have gone through a midlife crisis, and instead of going through the discomfort of doing the work, they double down on these distractions because they don't know any better. That's all they've known, and it is uncomfortable to do the work, but
Yep.
it shall set you free.
And I know, some people who don't know us may think like, oh, who are these, 22-year-old men? What do they know, right? But I know we look very young for our ages, but we're both actually 43. Is that right? You're 43 as well? Yeah, I thought so. So we really are speaking from life experience when we talk about this stuff, and I'm so glad that you mentioned a couple of things there, like the lack of good role models today in terms of men teaching young men how to be men is so absent. It's so obviously absent, that it's almost kind of, it's worrying. It's worrying on a bigger scale. Like the manosphere seems to be growing at times, but then also, a lot of people out there are putting it in its place, which is great. But I don't think enough normal men, or whatever normal is, but men like you and I who have done the work, who don't normally speak up in these kinds of ways. I do think it's important for more people like us to stand up and say, this is not the way. There are different ways to be a man, especially a young man, and you want to try and learn while making as few mistakes as possible. That's kind of the name of the game of being a young man, especially in today's culture when the internet never forgets. There is a lot of pressure, and it's not easy to be a young person at all, and that includes a young man. But if you can navigate it with making as few mistakes as possible, especially these big mistakes that are, very, very hindering in terms of the way that you fit in with your culture, with your society, the way that you have strong relationships with women or other men. Um, those are just really important mental health and societal issues that could not be such big issues if it wasn't for people out there like the Manosphere. So I thought what we might do here is go through section by section on some of these notes and just talk about pieces of this. So, like, for example, they break down the Manosphere into 5 separate kind of subgroups. There's incels, which are these involuntary celibates who feel entitled to sex but believe women purposefully deprive them of it, often fostering a deep resentment of women. And is that just not so dangerous sounding on, like, to me, that you can draw a direct line between that and domestic violence or sexual assault, and to teach men that this is actually a good way of thinking is just mind-boggling to me. But what do you think about when with some of the stuff I just said, or with incel groups in general?
I mean, it reminds me a lot of, like, we've talked about our dad's generation.
Mm-hmm.
And like my dad was, as a young child, molested by his older female cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And then growing up into their society, and how, the introduction of porn, because there was that was the bigger, I guess, scale of, before that it was magazines, and you had like, pinups, and then it was like, oh, VHS, I can watch porn. So it was easily distracting from doing the work, especially that generation of, oh, and I'm not going to feel this, and I'm not going to be vulnerable. That's being a pussy. I can, put all my focus on this, and well, she's not having sex with me, and it's all about that sexual release instead of, being vulnerable. And then like, oh no, I'm a man, I'm not vulnerable. Like, that's the woman's job. How come?
Right.
Oh, she doesn't want to have sex with me, then what's wrong with her?
Exactly, that blame shifting. Exactly, and the entitlement. Um, yeah, it seems crazy to me to think that, like, the inability to, like you said, be vulnerable with yourself, to look in the mirror, to say, gosh, well, if nobody wants to fuck me, like, there must be something wrong with everybody else, not me. Like, that to me just seems like a wild mentality. Even when I was much younger and in kind of a bit of narcissism in order to survive the childhood trauma that I was experiencing, I still don't think I would have thought that way. That seems like another level of thinking, to think that literally everybody, there's a problem with literally everybody else. I can't possibly believe why no one would want to be with me. Um, the delusional aspect of that must be going on in these young men's brains, and that the predators are fostering, is again so dangerous. It reminds me of cult-like behavior. Reminds me of radicalism, terrorist-like behavior, extremist-like behavior. And I am wondering, do you see that level of it, like where you work at a college, or is that maybe a little bit too extreme on a daily basis?
No, because like I said, I see everything there, and you'll hear it because I'll go around to different dorms and I work in different dorm rooms, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you overhear conversations and people's egos, and it's like, what? And like what they're watching on TV, and it's like I can't sit there and watch them because it's just like, holy crap, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that it snowballs in either direction. Like once you get in that mentality of that ego and that projection and that distracting yourself, you need bigger and bigger distractions.
Mm-hmm.
But then like the more work you do, that's why I said awareness brings more awareness. And sometimes people become aware of something, and then it's like, I relate it to like the Oregon Trail. Like my wife's best friend lives in North Dakota. And I'm like, why the fuck would you live in North Dakota? There's nothing out here. It's flat, nothing. There's no mountains. There's no trees. It's just liquor stores. And it's like, oh, we made it this far. Like half our people died of dysentery, and wagon wheels are gone.
Right.
You know what? This is far enough. Like,
Yep.
oh, yeah, maybe Montana's a lot cooler, but we've done enough work. Like, this is enough. Yeah, we're uncomfortably comfortable, and this sucks, but I don't want to be anymore because of that fear of the unknown, that fear of change, and it's so easy for people to distract themselves, especially like we said with the internet and especially these young men with Manosphere. I was talking to one of the students I work with the other day about like porn. That's why they call it a mini ego death. It's like it's your brain, your body. It's like everything is consumed by this, and then you're like, oh, okay, I don't have to think about anything else. And then you have that release, and it's like, oh, what the fuck did I just watch? Oh, yeah. And then like, okay, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, the
And
shame.
then,
The shame comes in.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just like me growing up, it was like, oh, I'm never drinking again. But that was like, that's how I was taught. It was like, oh, distract yourself with drinking and don't feel what you're feeling. Like, don't be a pussy. Drink beer and black out drunk until you don't feel any of this. And I think that's like now it's so much easier to distract yourself with because there's so many distractions, not just alcohol and porn, but everything. Like there's all these like the Manosphere. There's so many different. Hey, look at this. Look at this is flashy. Look at. No, don't do the inner work. Like look at this. You're not cool unless you have a Ferrari and you have like 10 girlfriends and then once I get off the camera, it's
Yeah.
I fucking hate myself. But that's the work, you know.
That's exactly right. And in the documentary that even gets brought up a little bit with one of his subjects. I don't remember the guy's name, and his name's not worth remembering, but he was really nasty to his girlfriend. He had a podcast, and his girlfriend was on camera a little bit, and Louis was talking to her, and eventually you find out later that it was a really abusive relationship, and she ended up leaving him, and so he was faking it. He was 100% faking it, like you said. He was one way on the camera in order to sell an image to unsuspecting, unknowing, insecure young men. Which again, it's not their fault for being unknowing and insecure. That's what everybody is when they're 14. But yeah, it just you reminded me a little bit of that kind of goes along with what you're saying. And then also too, you said something to the effect of like basically we've got to pick ourselves up and move forward, and this culture of like don't show emotions, and otherwise you're a wuss, you're weak. That kind of reminds me of something that David Goggins would say is pick up yourself by your bootstrap and, force yourself to the finish line kind of idea, which on one hand, I can completely understand why people like David Goggins and some of the things that he says, because it is pushing you to be the best version of yourself. I think on the surface, it means well, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And we now know more about him, and that he is very problematic, and it's also too not so easy for some people. Some people are so disadvantaged in life, so put in a hole so early, that it's not as easy as just pick yourself up and move forward. Sometimes there are, problems of socioeconomic, basically issues, or, poverty. Just being black like automatically puts you at a disadvantage, right? Like, so everything. There's all kinds of ways that people could be held back in life without something like the manosphere also pushing them down. And that's the shit that really bothers me is life is already so hard. I want to be compassionate to these young men who are maybe thinking about the manosphere as an option. I want to be compassionate because I know life can be very hard. You and I we had a hard childhood as well, and we made a lot of these kinds of mistakes. But there is another way of doing things, and it really is about cutting away the distractions and finding who you really are on the inside. The faster you can find your authentic self in life, the better you will be, and the further you will go sooner too. And that really starts with put down the phone, put down the video game controller. Look inward. Just how often do we really stop what we're doing and just think about how am I doing? What do I want to be doing? Am I okay? Like, where is my life going? We so rarely stop the forward momentum of our daily lives in order to check in with ourselves. And I do feel like a lot of this could be solved if people, especially young men, did that more often. But you're right, it's just not in the cultural zeitgeist right now.
And I don't think it really ever has been. Like,
Mm-hmm.
look at our dad. Like,
Yeah.
you tell them to slow down
Yeah.
and go inward. And that's kind of like where my awakening stemmed from. Was I had so much resentment towards my dad, and then he was going through beginning stages of Alzheimer's and dementia, and it was like he told my mom that he felt like he was losing his mind. And it's kind of like the Matrix, like free your mind. We're so distracted with all this noise around us that we don't slow down enough to be present and go inward. Like I've always heard my whole life, like the answer lies within. Like, oh no, it's whatever. No, that's got to be out here. That person's or this person's. Especially now with like the manosphere, like, oh, that person looks like they have got the answers. And like you were just talking about, everyone has their own unique path. And like what works for this one person isn't gonna work for you. And it's like you have to figure out yourself out and what works for you. And then you can use this, once you do the work, then you can discern what all these other people are saying, like, oh no, that's obviously not going to work for me. I've tried that, and like it's a long road, but it's like you said, there's not enough people out there and role models to be like, hey, you don't have to listen to me, you don't have to listen to them. Like, slow down, listen to yourself, listen to your instinct, like trust your instincts. Like we've been trying to fill this hole our whole lives, but it's like the answer's been within us this whole time. But that's a hard thing to admit, especially with the egos of today's society. And it's like, well, no, I gotta do what this person does. Well, this David Goggins says this, or this person says this. Like, look at Dan Bilzerian. He had, cruise ships and yachts and this and 10 women around him and models, and look at him now. He realizes how, like, he had to go through that process of awakening to be able to see how absurd that was and how life deadening that was. Like, you look at it and it looks glamorous and, oh, that looks awesome. He's got 10 models around him and and it was like, he talks about now how depressed he was, even though he was surrounded by all these beautiful women, and because it was just a distraction from himself. And like you see all these men who are awakening now, and what they had to go through. I mean, like Mike Tyson is all these big names that were in front of the camera, in front of all this, and what they thought they had to be, and comparing themselves to other men, and well, look at them, they're this great whatever, and I have to be like that. It's like, no, you have to be you, and then you'll figure out everything out. Like, find yourself first, and then everything kind of falls into place.
Yep. The distraction is really a facade from finding your authentic self, and it is what it seems like. And I'm glad you said a couple of the things that you just said, like in terms of getting an awakening. I think maybe I'm just now kind of thinking about this, formulating this idea in my head. But what comes to me when you were talking about an awakening, a personal awakening, because I've also gone through one as well, and I wonder if we hadn't gone through so much as children, would we even need to get to a point where we had to have an awakening at all? I wonder if you grow up in a secure, strong, loving environment that is a good role model of how to be as an adult, if an awakening isn't a necessary piece in order to find your authentic self. And I wonder how many of these young men either need an awakening because of external factors, or are setting themselves up to need an awakening because they're falling down this rabbit hole of the manosphere. Just an interesting thought that you kind of made me think of as you were talking there.
And that reminds me of how I keep telling my son that I'm like, everything happens for a reason. He's like, well, mom doesn't say that. Mom says it doesn't. I'm like, that's because it's uncomfortable for your mom to admit that. And it's like, suffering led to our salvation. And like he said, and I've talked about that recently, about how, I mean, growing up, I was more aware for whatever reason than a lot of the people around me. And I think so are you. That's why we connected so much. Like, I remember being in Kmart, and you go down one aisle, the toy section, and this family is like, oh no, Johnny, we can't get, maybe for your birthday. And then it's like, oh, that's a nice loving family. And then you go down the next aisle, and it's like, Billy knocked a toy off the aisle, and it's like, you stupid fucking piece of shit. And it's like, what is, why is that so different?
Yep.
And then, like, I was talking about with my wife, like, doing the work is slowing down, and like breath work, and all these different aspects of not healing, but being, and allowing yourself to be yourself. And like, when we were growing up, that was all woo-woo bullshit. Like, no, you don't meditate, you don't do yoga, you don't breath work, you don't slow down. Like, no, we don't have time for that shit. Come on, get to work. And like, I always thought the work was, physical labor. And it was like, hey, I got to work 40 hours a week, and then I'll find salvation. No, it was like, answer, like we said, the answer lies within the whole time. But that's kind of hard to grasp, because it's like, you've been told your whole life the answer lies outside of you, or this podcast, or this person, or this person has all the answers, or you got to be like them, or you got to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or you got to be like, these actors on TV. And it's like, holy shit, there's so many, and it's all flashy. Like, look at this, oh, look at this. And it's gotten more and more production value of these movies and these podcasts and these shows and these, oh, the new season of, look at this, you have to watch this, and you have to be like this, and oh, did you see what this guy did? And it's like, well, I'm not even close to that. I must be a piece of shit. Especially these young kids. And like, at 14, like, I was explaining this to my mom. I'm like, she was raised in a Catholic school. And I'm like, you were told all this stuff, and it was through fear. Like, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And if you don't do this, you're going to hell. But then you look at the pastor, and he's doing all this crazy stuff. And it's like, no, we don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. Especially with like generational trauma. It's like those older generations, you didn't talk about stuff, especially when it was like serious shit that was like, oh no, we don't talk about that. Don't talk about that in front of grandma and grandpa. It's going to make everyone uncomfortable.
Yep.
And it's like, that's the point. It's like, you're supposed to get uncomfortable, especially those things.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like, but people don't get past that initial discomfort. So then it grows into all this other shit that you don't even know that's what it's from, because you never talked about the original. Like I was talking about with my mom, and she's like, well, what trauma do you think that I went through? Like, you don't see it as trauma because it was normal for you. Like,
Yes.
you look at people think as trauma, like, oh, I rolled my car and then I got a werewolf had sex with me while I was laying there. And she's like, well, that's aggressive. I'm like, yeah, but that's what people think. It could be you were walking through Walmart as a little kid and you knocked something on the floor, and a clerk that was dealing with their own shit projected onto you, and it's like, you stupid, worthless piece of shit, like, fuck out of here. And if you're a kid and you've never experienced that before, you take that personally.
Yep.
And then that victim mentality is like, well, I guess I'm a stupid piece of shit.
Yep.
And then you never, instead of seeing it, like you said, we've said, doing the work, you see people are projecting so much of their shit, like this manosphere. It's like, no, you got to be this, you got to be this. Oh, if you don't have this, then you're not a man. It's like, we see right through that, because it's like, we have done the work and we have been through those uncomfortable times with like our dads and what they were through, and all of it.
My dad would have been the one telling me that I was a worthless piece of shit because I knocked something on the floor. So I completely understand that 100%. And when you grow up that way, you're right. It is a level of normalcy. From my personal experience, I didn't really fully accept or even realize to an extent how much of a victim I was until I was in my like mid 30s. That's how lost my brain was. When you grow up fully engrossed in a traumatic environment, your brain chemistry, it goes off, and you find yourself acting ways and being ways that doesn't even make sense to you. I can think of so many times in my childhood where I was like, I'm embarrassed, or I'm ashamed, or because I was like, why did I do that? Why was I that way? Why did I say those things? It doesn't feel authentic to who I am, who I've always seen myself being. And it's because you grow up with this distorted reality due to the trauma or due to whatever. And that's exactly what the manosphere seems to be. It seems to be a continuation of that distortion. And maybe for some lost, insecure kids who aren't from that kind of, extreme trauma background, they might they might just be lonely. They might just be confused. They might just be whatever, interested, curious, and they find this, and they find a community that accepts them, and that's exciting, and it feels like empowerment, and it feels like authenticity, and then it turns into something poison, and it holds you back in life. And that's why it's so dangerous, and why I thought it was important for you and I to have this conversation. So I very much appreciate your vulnerability, and I'm also happy to go there too. And there was, something that you said as well, is the Oregon Trail analogy, which I really like that. People are only willing to go as far as they're willing to go. And there are some people, like, there are people in my life, I don't want to out them specifically on without their permission, but there are people in my life who also experience similar things to me, or sometimes exactly the same thing as me. And they're not ready. They haven't allowed themselves to feel the pain. They haven't moved through it and sat in that uncomfortable space and really looked in the mirror and accepted what it was that happened to them. And because when you do that, there is a level of having to admit to yourself that you allowed some part of this to happen to you, especially, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, because again, like I just said, I didn't really fully realize how much of a victim I was until I was like in my mid 30s. By that point, I had agency. I had the ability to walk away from people within my family or whatever. And ultimately, that is what I did. And that helped me lead to my awakening and ultimately my authentic self today. But that's not always easy for everyone. You know, there are people who sometimes go through certain things or different things, and it's just too painful to look at, and they're only willing to go a certain ways, and that's for them to decide. That's their own journey. That I'm not going to tell them how to heal or how to go about it. But when you're dealing with children who, again, their brains are not fully formed, and they're, like I said, looking for an outlet or a community because they don't feel like they have one, this is just nothing but predatory BS, and it really, really, quite frankly, pisses me off. It make like I've some of these men who have contributed to the Manosphere the most. I've done a little bit of digging on them. It didn't take much to find some pretty nasty things about them. You know, some of them are in hiding because they're wanted for human trafficking. Others are completely shunned even within their own community. And maybe we'll talk more about this towards the end of the podcast. I got a little game that I might play with you. But yeah, there's so much good stuff that you're saying there that makes me think of today's society is more difficult to navigate because of all of the available distractions. But also too, it's a little bit hopeful and exciting because with all of the available distractions comes all of the available answers and all of the available outlets and resources. So it's there at their fingertips now to be able to find their real path in a healthy and successful path. And this is not it. But they do have the ability now with social media and with the internet to come to these findings earlier in life. And that is not something that you and I had the privilege of doing. You and I came from before the internet. I mean, I was writing college papers on a typewriter. I don't know about you, but I remember those days. And that's maybe another whole conversation in itself. But what comes up for you with a lot of the stuff that I just spit out there?
Well, I see it as like you said, when you're younger and you would do things that, why did I do that? It was these coping mechanisms that as a kid you did this. And I see that in my own son and how he's, it's that generational trauma and those destructive cellular memories that, oh, I'm gonna do this because this is so uncomfortable to feel right now that I'm gonna do this. And it's like I said, that those distractions and that ways of dealing with what you're feeling but not knowing how to deal with it, especially as a young kid. And then you look and it's this flashy ways of, hey, no, do it this way, and this way is the way to do it. And it's like, yeah, it's easy in the moment, and it's like these quick fixes of, okay, yeah, I can do this. And like we were talking about earlier, porn is like a quick distracting, that death of ego, and like, oh, okay, I don't have to think about all these issues that I'm dealing with and my family and all this. I can just numb it for a little bit, and I can numb it with this. And like you said, and I've talked about this recently, how like my nephew, you can use the internet. There's so much information. It's not like you're in a village where you have to listen to your local pastor and 20 people in your community, because if you don't, then you're going to be shunned out and you're a piece of shit. It's like, no, you have access to, yeah, you're not writing on a typewriter. You have access to every culture, like I remember going to the Midwest as a kid. Like we'd go there every other summer, and they were like 3 years behind of the West Coast. Like they'd have what was popular 3 years ago, they would, because out in the middle of nowhere and they didn't know any better. Kind of like living in North Dakota. You just think this is life. Like there can't be any better than this. And like you've talked about how things are or uncomfortable, so we don't get out of our comfort zone. Like I like the analogy of, I think it was they're talking about mushrooms and how you go down a ski slope so many times and it creates a path of, okay, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So then and that's comfortable. And I was explaining this to a student, how you're going down that bunny hill and you're going on the same path and it's comfortable and then it's easy. And then it's like, oh, I can't get off this. I'm just going to keep going down this path. Like you were saying, some people don't get past that or aren't ready to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I can't go on the blue diamond run. That's like until you're like, okay, I'm gonna get on the lift and just go up there and check it out. And then you go down and I was like, holy shit, this is way better than the bunny hill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been within us the whole time, but it's like you have to take that step of discomfort out of your comfort zone. And like, oh, there's no way I could do the black diamond run. That's at the top of the mountain. It's like in the Bible they say faith the size of a mustard seed will move mountains. And it's like the mountains are within you. But we give our power away to these people outside of us and these coping mechanisms, and then you finally get up to the black diamond run and you, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is what I was meant to do. I was supposed to go down the top of the mountain, not stick on the bunny hill my whole life.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get trapped in that bunny hill of, well, this is comfortable. They're uncomfortably comfortable. It's like, yeah, I know there's more to life than this, but this is comfortable and this is easy. And I know this, and especially with trauma, it's like you hear all this, you've been through trauma. So it's like change is scary because it's usually led to something uncomfortable or tragic, or so then you're just, okay, I'm going to stay here and stay in North Dakota and, set up shop here. Even the Indians won't attack us here because they don't even like it here. So we're safe. Yeah, we're miserable, but we're safe. And I think that's a lot of today's societies, but there's so much easily distractions. Like I said, the internet, there's all this access to all this wisdom that we never had access to growing up. Yeah. And now these kids have, but now there's so much information out there, and it's so easily to get distracted by these manosphere people and these podcasters that are spreading out bullshit just to make a buck or to get likes or followers instead of speaking the truth. It's and then it does piss you off because it's like, oh man, I was so influenced by people like that, and it sucks because you've been there and you see it and you get mad. But that's kind of like I can't remember what podcast it was, but he's talking about we've awakened enough Davids to take on Goliath. And it's like, that's Goliath. We think it's this big scary monster, and it's like, oh, just take him down with one little stone. We built it up in our heads of, well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So having that self-confidence, and the answer lies with it. And that's crazy to think about, that our egos are like, no, it couldn't be. I didn't have the answer the whole time. It's got to be out there in someone else. Like, and then that resentment, like, how come they haven't given me the answer yet? And like with this manosphere thing, it's like, oh, I've got the answers. Yeah, this is what you need to do. It's like, bullshit. And you're full of shit, and you know it.
And you can get those answers. You can get those answers for just $49.99 a month. That's all.
Exactly. We're gonna charge you for it, but
Yep.
I have the answers. I've done the work. Like, this is what you gotta subscribe to my channel for, and then you'll get the advanced class for $59.99 a month.
That's right. Like,
shut the fuck up.
You know how I know that we're actually spitting truth bombs is because I can guarantee everyone that I'm not making a buck or a dime or a penny off of this channel. So
and that's my thing. It was like my awakening. It was like I did try to find all this stuff online, and it was like the more work I did, it realized like, why is everyone charging for this?
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be charging for the truth. No. And like these kids, like, well, it's got to be worth something. Like, it's got to be have the answers because he's charging for it. So it's worth charging for. But then it's like, once the more and more work you do, you realize it's all a facade and it's all bullshit. Well, and it sucks because these kids are so, like you said, so easily influenced by these influencers.
Yep.
Oh, look at how many followers they have, and look how many likes they have. It's just insane.
And I think that's one of the ways you can quickly tell that it is a facade and it is a predatory scheme, is that they do charge for it. They charge so much because if you were truly an influencer and you truly had the answers, why would you not want to share that with everyone And then if you did that in an
Exactly.
authentic way, people would find you. People would flock to you. People would want to listen again and again and again. And in today's society, it's very easy to monetize that without having to charge your customers. You shouldn't be looking at these young men as customers. You should be looking at them as maybe lost souls who need help. And I just think it's, again, that's where I go back to the whole preying on the elderly, and stuff like that with these scam calls. It's no different in my opinion. They're instead of the elderly, they're preying on the young, whose brains aren't fully formed, and it's just wild to me. It's wild. But do you want me to go through a couple more subgroups, or is there anything else that you that came up for you?
I mean, like you said, it is wild because it's so crazy that, you know, if you did have all the answers, why would you charge for it? And it makes me think how the more work I do, we realize we are all one.
Mm-hmm.
When we're all part of, we are all one. And like, why would you charge yourself for the answers to the key to life? Like, why would you no, you have to pay me to be happy.
Yep.
Like, that's fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I have the answers. So you're my client or my whatever. Like, no, and if you want to heal, you got to pay me to get these answers.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, instead of sharing all this information with each other, because it's like, you know what that feels like,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how lost it can feel. You can feel, and then it's like, oh well, you don't want to be lost anymore, or $49.99 a month.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be lost anymore. I have the answers. But it's like, we need to share all this wisdom with each other. And I think that's the benefit of the internet,
Mm-hmm.
is there is all the answers out there, but it's like we're convinced, or a lot of these kids are convinced that, well, you have to pay for it to get if they're not charging for it, that can't be the answer, because we're so conditioned to think that, I have to exchange money for,
Mm-hmm.
like at work, I work in the trades department. And that makes me think, I've had this conversation with these old guys at work. I'm like, trade, like, not trade money for, I got to work my life away for the shitty job that I hate to get a shitty paycheck. But no, trade wisdom and love and everything with each other, like we're supposed to do, instead of building up this resentment towards each other and the human nature of, well, what's mine is, you got to pay for it to get what I've learned. And that resentment, especially in men, I've noticed with that boomer generation, especially now, it's like the younger kids have all this access to wisdom, and then these boomer generation are kind of resentful because it's like, oh, you little fucker, like I had to go spend my whole life to working at a job I hate to
Mm-hmm.
to not even have half the wisdom you do right now. You should be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like that level of resentment too, that the people that haven't done the work,
Mm-hmm.
but also that they've been convinced by society that they had to work for it,
Mm-hmm.
not do the inner work, but like I said, oh, you got to do physical labor and then you'll get the answers.
Yep.
You got to work at a production job and slave your whole life away, and then you realize when you're 65 that, holy shit, that was a whole waste of time.
Yep.
And it's like a lot of them are awakening. Like I've had conversations with these old guys, and it's, when I do get vulnerable with them, they see that they're allowed to get vulnerable too, and it's amazing because it's like, oh, the truth shall set you free, and it's like the truth has been out there the whole time, but these Manosphere guys have been manipulating the truth for their own benefit, just because they're afraid to let go of the ego and pride.
Yep, that's exactly right. And keeping it behind a paywall, it just creates a further separation from this inclusion that the paying customers are trying to find. They're trying to find this community that they can be a part of, that this wisdom that they can gain. And this is where I go back to the agency of both parties, because yes, these young kids are a little too young to maybe understand what's going on, and I don't blame them for that. But one day they're going to grow up and they're going to say, damn, if I just would have seen that sooner, because I did at the time have the agency to not pay for that. I could have said, is this really the work? Is paying for something doing the work? I don't think so. Like physically paying for something. I think you have to go through the hardship and the experience of figuring out who you are and releasing a lot of the changing a lot of the negative coping skills and releasing a lot of the toxic shame and going through the process of bettering your inside. Because like you said, I loved what you said about the mountain was within you, and that's why the mustard seed can move it. And that's 100% what it feels like to heal from trauma, at least for me, is like I'm moving these mountains from within me and I no longer have to carry that weight on my back. And it's very, very freeing. But you know what? You know what I don't have to do in order to do that? Pay $50 a month and listen to some podcast. Like I can literally just sit there and meditate. I can journal. I do speak with a therapist. I actually speak with two sometimes. So I mean, like all of that helps. You know, having people in my life like yourself. Um, Everybody needs some kind of outlet, needs some kind of community. And so I again I do understand why young men who are lost would be looking for something like this, but this is not the way. You know, this is definitely not the way, and it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating on a lot of levels.
It does build a lot of resentment in people because, especially with men, it's that ego and pride. Like our dads, it was like, oh, I'm not gonna, because I know they went through a lot of shit growing up, but it's like they weren't allowed to talk about it, not even get close to it. So it just built this resentment and this. I like the analogy of the hot air balloon and how you're trying to ascend, but it's like we tether ourselves to these stories and these people and these situations, and it's like, well, no, I can't forgive them. Like like we've always been told, forgiveness isn't for other people, it's for you. And like instead of, oh, I couldn't forgive them, they were so mean to me, and it's like, but you're just tethering yourself to that situation, and that
Yes.
instead of seeing it for what it really is, and like the more work you do, the more you realize, holy shit, like they were just projecting their shit that they had healed from on me. And I took it personally because I didn't know any better. And the more we explain that, and I know for me, the more work I've done, like first I had to listen to something when I meditated, and then now it's like I'll put earplugs in and an eye mask in and lay in the bathtub just so I can, like, the human senses are so distracting because we're so, especially like this manosphere and this, everything's so flashy and look at this, and it pulls on every aspect of all your human senses instead of that sixth sense, that instinct that we have of within. And when you shut all that noise off, like this guy at work who I work with, he's talking about looking for a therapist, and he's like, I mean, you look through, you swipe and you see all these different weird looking ones. He's like, so I finally found one, and I was talking to him about mushrooms and how I went on a mushroom journey. And he said his therapist said he went on it because he was talking about what I was talking to him about with his therapist. And he goes, hey man, I just have to talk to you about this. He's like, my therapist basically saying the same thing you were, like, everything's just noise. Like, especially when you're on your own path of self-discovery and that inner journey, like everything around you is noise. Like, no, I have the answer. Like the manosphere, like, hey, no, this is the answer. No, hey, look over here, $49.99. Well, mine's only $39.99, and you could have all the answers. And it's like, it is so distracting because it's like our senses are so triggered and conditioned to listen to that. Like advertising people have been doing research on advertising for forever to get like, oh, this certain color combination and this noise combination, and oh, okay, I need to go to frickin' Arby's and get a shitty roast beef sandwich or or whatever. And we're so influenced by this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And when we do, like you said, slow down and turn off all the noise, it's like, holy shit, the answer's been here the whole time. Well, no, and then you get resentful towards yourself because it's like, oh, what? I could have been doing it. No, and then you kind of go back into that distracting yourself because it is kind of ego death to admit that the answer has been within you the whole time, but you've been looking at all this stupid shit around you and that you've allowed yourself to be manipulated by these idiots.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of the work. Like you said, it's like we have to slow down and realize. And then once you do have done the work, you have so much more discernment towards everything. Because it's like, oh, I can see right through that. God, I remember when I believed that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you have empathy towards these younger men that are so distracted, especially now. Like I said, you have everything in your pocket. Every porn you could ever watch, every movie you ever watch, every distraction, and it's 24/7 in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like at my work, they just had a high school football camp. And these kids brought a fucking Xbox and TV with them and they blew all the breakers because they stayed in the field house and they all had to have their phones and their Xboxes and their TVs plugged in. But they had those boxes that had 20 fucking things plugged in them because they had to have their phones charged. Like, you're at a football camp, like, with other dudes, but they were all just so distracted with, and especially these younger kids, like, it is so flashy. Like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at, he's got 10 girlfriends and he's got a Ferrari and it's bright pink and he's got this and he's going on these vacations. And it's so easy to allow themselves to be distracted because it is that kind of, oh, it feels good to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't feel right. But I don't know what else to do because not a lot of men are doing the work.
Yep.
Or it's like they're not vulnerable enough to talk about it. And that's kind of my thing is being more and more vulnerable and allowing. That's why I keep doing the work because I've noticed that vulnerability is a big thing for me, and allowing myself to show emotion around other people. And it's hard because for my whole life we were taught that men aren't supposed to be vulnerable and aren't supposed to show emotion.
Right.
But that's part of real masculinity is showing. Like, I like the picture of the yin and the yang. Like, you can't have light without darkness. And the further into the shadows of yourself you go, the more light you're able to see.
Yep. But
some people don't. It's like they've been in the dark for so long that the light is like, oh, it's like, no.
Yeah. Yep.
And then when you try to tell people that, I've noticed that at work too, is like these kids, when you do bring it up, and you do talk about the truth and the light, it is kind of like, it's turn it down. I don't want to hear that because I'm so used to distracting myself with these superficial, quick, easy fixes that last for 5 seconds. And then I can jump to the next video. That's why these short little videos, it's like, no, I can't watch longer than 10 seconds. They might talk about something uncomfortable that makes me actually think about stuff.
I want to be clear about something that you said there because I agree with everything you said, but there is a piece to this that we're being vulnerable and doing the work and learning to sit with your uncomfort or your discomfort. It takes practice. It is a skill that you can cultivate, and we've been doing this, real personal growth and development on ourselves for years. So it's like, me 2 years ago would not have been able to have this conversation on a public forum like this. Me even 6 months ago probably wouldn't have been comfortable with it. But I'm finally in a place now at 43 going on 44 where it's like, yeah, bring it on. I'm ready, And especially when there's shit like this going on that I feel almost not responsible, but I feel called or compelled to stand up and say that this is not okay and there are other ways of being, and you don't have to make the same mistakes that you and I made. And even though we didn't make we didn't pay $49.99, thank God, because one, it wasn't available, and two, we didn't have the money, but we did make a lot of the same mistakes, a lot of the same ways of thinking were things that we had negative coping skills around, in order to survive a tough era of our life. At least for me, I don't want to speak too much for you in that regard, but I can relate to a lot of this stuff, and that's one reason why I do have some compassion towards the kids that are doing this. Not the men, not the so-called men, if you can even call them that, doing that are pushing this, but. Yeah, I just and then the other thing that you mentioned about the older generation, they're so not willing to go to that place of discomfort that it just creates this greater separation between our generation, their generation, the younger generation. There's this massive gap where people are not willing to sit down and talk with each other and really understand each other and really see, and if they did, they would really see that we are all one in so many different ways. And that to me is another thing that I think needs to get talked about, and that gap needs to get bridged, because it is important, especially the further we go on in this culture. I mean, look at politics today. Look at the state of the country. I mean, I live 3 hours from D.C. I went to the reflecting pool just a couple of weekends ago with another buddy of mine, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But so I see it firsthand, and so much division. So much division right now in so many different ways. And part of that goes along with not just the manosphere or politics, it goes along with the availability of distraction and the availability of anything you want at the fingertips. I always think about that funny song from Bo Burnham, welcome to the internet. We have everything you want all of the time. It's a great song. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's so true. It's so true. There is anything you want all of the time. And how dare you for slowing down for 1 second to see if it's even something that you want to pay for?
There's so much cool shit to see.
Yeah.
Like, don't slow down.
You might miss out on the next cool thing that you can pay for.
Yeah, what's next? What's next? What's next? And that's funny that you bring up like the bridge, because I was talking about this. There's a guy at my work, and then there's another guy. There's a couple guys at my work that are the same age as us, have gone through similar awakenings as us, and then we've had these conversations, and how I feel like our generation is the bridge between this older generation who all they did was connect on that's what they did. That's all they knew. And where we grew up and saw the transition of technology and the internet and computers, and then this new generation of which all they know is the internet and iPads. And so it's like, there is this gap. And like, we are the bridge, because it's like we see everything so much clearly, especially after doing the work, and how that older generation dealt with things. Like this old guy at my work, he's like, a generation I'd like to go back to was the 50s. He goes like, fast cars, hot women. I go, yeah, but if you went back to the 50s right now and actually walked around and interacted, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck did he just say?
Right.
I'm like you're talking about songs. I've been relating, and I told my mom this. I'm like, the Fleetwood Mac song "Landslide," when it's like, I've been afraid of changing or changes because I've built my life around fear. And she goes, no, it's you. And I'm like, yeah, but if you think about it, you've been afraid of changing and changes because you've built your life around fear and the fear of the unknown and changing. And it's so easy to, like the snow-covered hill and the landslide brought me down. And I think about, I've been using the analogy of Monsters, Inc. a lot lately. Because it's like fear, they use fear and screams to get power. And there is power in fear, kind of like these manospheres. Like, you're using fear and control and power to get more power and fear, which, yeah, it does give you this false sense of power. But it's like, you realize that, like in the movie Monsters, Inc., they're afraid of the kid coming in because it's like the heart of a child. But there's so much more power, and then they don't realize it because it's like it blows everything up, because there is so much power and love and actually feeling and being vulnerable. But it's like they're so used to fear, that's all they know.
Yep.
like this older generation. They've been based their lives around fear, because that's, like I told my mom, like she grew up in Catholic school. It was like fear, fear. Oh, you're going to hell if you do this. So if you do this, if you eat candy, you're going to hell. And it was like fear, fear, instilling this fear in these people instead of the truth. He'll set you free. It's like, no, let's control them with fear. And it's like, once you do realize, it's crazy. Like that one movie when she asked him, what's the biggest lie you've ever been told? It's not that easy. And I think that's the biggest lie we tell ourselves too. It's like, it's not that easy. Like it's hard to do, but it's very simple.
Yes.
Like if you do just slow down and stop distracting yourselves with all this stuff, it's like, it's so simple.
Yep.
It's hard because it's like you've been avoiding it your whole life and been taught to avoid it your whole life, that it's so foreign for so many people, especially now with all these distractions and bigger distractions. It's like, holy shit.
Yep.
And like when I do the work in the morning, it's like it'll open up so much shit that I've been avoiding, and then it's like, okay, that's enough for a day. But then like the next day it opens up more and more doors, and it's like, oh shit, holy shit. And it is amazing because it's like you haven't been able to feel what you've been supposed to been feeling, that unconditional love and that truth and that authenticity. You've been so distracted and allowed yourself to get distracted by all this shit around you. That's why it does piss us off so much about this manosphere, because you know how much bullshit it is and how much it is hurting these young kids, and you do want them to be free because you are empathetic towards them, because we were in that spot before.
Yeah. We
know how bad that sucks.
Yep. We were them in some ways, you know, and that is one of the reasons why when I did stumble across this this documentary and just the manosphere in general, and I kept reading about it, and I was like, I can really connect with a lot of this. Not in the way that like I feel like I agree with any of this bullshit. Of course not. It's all complete garbage. But I can understand why young lost young men would be attracted to it. One of the things that you mentioned that I really connected with there was the calling our generation the bridge, and I between older and new, and I really have truly believed that for a while now. I think elder millennials, we did bridge that gap between the analog and the digital eras. And we remember when the internet came out and Google became a thing, and I remember going to Ask Jeeves before Google, you know, and stuff like that. And like, for example, again, like I said, I remember writing college papers on a typewriter. I know how to change the oil in my car. You know, like I learned things like that. And I think that is one thing that sets up our generation to be really special in order to bring people together, because we just automatically grew up in a time where we crossed bridges, and we went from one era to another fairly seamlessly. I mean, I don't know a lot of millennials who don't know how to like work a computer, you know, troubleshoot an issue on a computer. Pretty much everybody knows how to, you know, do stuff like that, but I do know a lot of older people who don't. And then, you know, but obviously there's people that are 20, 30 years younger than me that can run circles around me on an iPad, right? So there is a middle ground that I think this country and a lot of extreme ideas like the Manosphere need to find. Because, again, going back to somebody like a Goggins, there are some good pieces of self-development and things to strive towards, and some of the things he says, even though he's a problematic person. There are sometimes, you know, ideals that could be skewed in a good way in some of this stuff. But I think it's doing the work, knowing who you are, knowing what's true for you, that allows you to sift out the nuggets of wisdom, the golden nuggets of wisdom, with all of, and throw away all the dirt. And so this is a very complex topic, and I've really been enjoying talking about it with you today. We've been going for a little over an hour. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, or we can keep going as long as you want to? I've got a few other things, but anything come to mind?
Well, you said that bridge, and I feel like we've got a level of discernment that is more humanistic, I feel. Because like you said, this new generation has grown up on the internet and everything is so, whereas this older generation, everything was like you had to go to the library and wait a week to get a book, and you had to mail stuff and you had to wait, and patience and like community was a big thing. And it's like I feel like we've been here before in past civilizations, but we weren't aware enough to harness the power that does lie within us. And it's like now we're through this awakening through everybody, we're able to discern, especially our generation, like you said, is like we saw this transition of whereas this older generation only knew one way and this new generation only knows one way. And it's like, but we have the discernment to see both ways, and we know what it was like before, and we know what it was like after, and we know what that bridge was. And like I see all these fads that we've gone through as a human species, and it was like, God, we were stupid. God, look what we used to do. God, we were stupid. And I feel like these fads are getting crazier and crazier, but they're lasting less and less time. Like the cancel culture.
Yes.
Like look at comedians. Like you're a comedian. You're supposed to say stuff that offends people. And it was like, no, you canceling these. And it was like, looking back how stupid we were. And like you look at COVID, and COVID either it kind of awakened people or it went people in either direction. Like you have three different ways. You either, oh, my side is right and you guys are stupid. Oh, my side is right, you guys are stupid. Or, oh, I see everything for what it really is. And it's like, holy shit, how are we all so stupid too? And it's like now we're that bridge too in another aspect of that. It's like seeing everything for what it is and having discernment to be like, okay, I'm not going to let that influence me. Like the whole influencer is crazy to just say that. It's like, you're an influencer. Oh, I'm an influencer. And it's like people take pride in that because you're influencing a generation to think like you do. And it's like, we are all one. And there is one truth, but we all each have our own truths.
Yes.
And like we create our own realities, but we give our power away to this stuff and these things and these other influencers and these other people instead of realizing the true power we have within us this whole time.
We all have our own unique experiences of that truth. And I agree, there is a singular truth, but there's also our unique experiences of it that are all very different. And that's why I don't like judging people if too harshly, because if I haven't walked in their shoes, I don't really feel like I have the right to do that. But at the same time, when you come across people like creators of the Manosphere, I don't look at them as people or men. I look at them as predators. I do think there's a difference. Like the only kind of people in our society that should be truly canceled are predators, of this kind and others, obviously. But one of the things that came up for me when you were talking about bridging the gap and a little bit from before is, I think one of the ways to get to this balanced place where you can know yourself and you can navigate this world of distraction and know to stay away from things like the Manosphere is to ultimately find forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for the people who wronged you, forgiveness for the things that you've done and that have happened to you, and so on. And that takes a long time to get there. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of sitting with uncomfortable feelings and finding emotions. Like you said, you struggle with vulnerability and allowing yourself to feel emotions. I've 100% been there too for years. There was a period of my life where I was, honestly, this might sound weird, but I was so depressed I didn't even know I was depressed. And I maybe some people can connect with that, but it was strange for me to eventually dig myself out of this hole that I didn't even know I was in. And then, like you said, you look back and know the journey wasn't easy, but the path is simple. And now that I know the path and have walked it before, it gets easier, and you can light a way back. These breadcrumbs that light the path for the next person. You can easily see that, and so there are elements of this that get easier. And I think it's always important to uh, remind yourself that it's okay to struggle, and that it's okay to feel a little lost, and also to remind yourself that it's temporary, that all suffering is temporary, and eventually you will have good moments and good times, and your life will start to fall into place. But you do have to have some agency, and you do have to have the willingness to find it, to figure out where you're meant to be, to figure out who you're meant to be. And a lot of that to me speaks to countering the insecurity that these young men have, that these manosphere bastards are preying upon. And it's not like you just click off the insecurity in life. It's not that easy. You again, you do have to do the work and walk that path. But once you do it, it gets easier. And it's like building upon positive energy, building upon love. It doesn't fade out. It doesn't feel like not enough butter over too much bread. It grows exponentially. It's like, I don't have 8 children, but I know somebody who has 8 children, and they don't love their child with 1/8 of their heart. Their heart grows 8 times as big. That's the way that they describe it, and I completely understand that now. I'm in a place in my life where I can understand that. You go through enough stuff and you do enough work, and you can understand that, like, through being vulnerable and through shedding a lot of pain, you actually gain strength. Insecurity leads to security, and I think you have to be willing to do the work, and that's ultimately what it boils down to. But these men are not projecting the final outcome of the work. They are selling a facade. They are selling a dream to young boys who don't know any better, and I just think that they are such worthless pieces of shit, to put it quite frankly.
Plus, I mean, you thought about, or you just talked about growing heart. It makes me think of like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, how he built this resentment up, and it's like that's a good parable or analogy of how we allow ourselves to become resentful towards society and resentful towards the work. And then it's like when you do become vulnerable, and it's like you do allow yourself to feel, and you see so much more clearly, it's like your heart does grow because you're able to see through the bullshit and see through the facade that you've created by allowing all these other people that have been living in a facade to, hey, look at you, it should be like this. And it's like, no, it's not supposed to be like that. And like you've always known that inside. And it's kind of like listen to your instinct. But it's so, oh, but look at this, look at this. And it's like, yeah, that feels wrong, but everyone else is doing it, so I guess I'll go along with it. And then that's another way of becoming resentful towards society and towards, and that's why, like you said, the work is so important, because then the more you do, like I like the analogy of we're spiraling upwards, we're ascending. Like you can go either way though. You can allow yourself to become more and more resentful and dwell on stuff, or you can be like, and then you go through the same situation but a higher perspective, and you're like, oh, well, that was stupid, or that was just, why did I listen to that person? And I've said this before, like clarity brings more clarity, but it's true, because it's like,
Yep.
oh, you see much more clear now. Oh, now I can see that was, oh my God, how did I believe that? And it's like these kids don't know any better, because it's like everything is so, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. like looking at the news, like my mom watching the news on repeat. I'm like, Mom, why are you watching that generation? It was like they were taught to believe everything they saw on TV.
Yes.
And like, oh, and actors were the epitome of everything, and like you're supposed to be, and it was like they're giving all their power away to this show, and it was all for show, and it was like, and then that's why it's hard for that generation to be vulnerable, because it's like everything they've taught was external. It was like, look at this, especially with the development of TV and like we said, this bridge that we saw that transition. Like we grew up on TV, and that was a big distraction for us. Like,
Definitely.
and at that time, we needed TV. We needed that distraction because everything around us was so uncomfortable. Like the 80s were fucked up. That was a weird time. Like you look at the 60s and 70s, that was like their awakening, and like the hippie culture, and they had, but then you had Vietnam and all these veterans coming back and being called baby killers, and it was like this divide of the country and awareness and people's, but no one had any way of like we said, they didn't have these tools and access to all this stuff. It was just like either you're a hippie or you don't fucking talk about it at all. And it's like, and it was this weird transition of our society. Like we said, we saw that transition into now where it's like these kids have access to all this wisdom and knowledge, so they think they know everything, but there's no experience. Like they're afraid to go out of their house, and everything's like a quick clip, and it's like, oh, I know that. Like, but you haven't experienced any of it. So it's easier to watch these Manosphere guys like, oh, it's quick, all you got to do is start your own YouTube channel and you'll be rich and you'll have a Ferrari, and you'll, well, how many followers do you have? It's like, it's that, like I said, once you do the work, you can see through that, and you have the discernment to see through the bullshit.
If you don't have enough followers, it's probably because you don't have a tight enough six pack, or
yeah, you don't have abs.
Yeah, exactly.
But more and having these conversations, like I've had these conversations with different generations at work. Like my work has provided me with all these opportunities that, it's kind of like the law of attraction. Once you've done the work, you attract these conversations and these and other people that are in this, kind of like how we reconnected. It was like divine intervention. And it's the more and more we do have these conversations, the more and more we're allowing other people to have these conversations and the other men to heal. And it's like, once we're doing the healing and doing the inner work, it's like, oh, like you said, you're that light, and you can allow these other, especially these young generation, to, so it's okay to feel, it's okay to talk about this stuff. We're supposed to talk about this stuff.
Right.
We're meant to share things together. Like we talk about that bridge, how this older generation was like, they didn't talk about this stuff. It was like, no, we don't talk about that. Come on, get to work. Like I said, the work was, to them, was working until you retire. Well, once I retire, then I can relax. And then like half of them die by when they retire because they didn't know any better. It's like their whole lives have been conditioned to do something they were told to do instead of following their instincts and listening to that inner voice and that guide. But now it's like we said, that bridge, we're able to have discernment and see everything so much more clearly, and having that perspective of how everything is happening for us instead of to us, like getting out of that victim mentality. Where it's like, well, if you have that mentality, then you look at everything as against you.
So many good points on that you've raised today, and I really appreciate you being vulnerable and willing to talk about this kind of stuff. It is a very complicated subject that I think deserves so much discussion, more than just you and I can do in a podcast episode. My hope for this is that other men similar to us will have the courage to speak up in some way. It could even just be to the young men in their own life, who are struggling with this kind of stuff, considering joining the Manosphere or whatever, and just let them know that like they're not alone. There are other ways of going about, navigating this difficult time in their life, and and that there are other men out there willing to help, and because like you said, the older generation, they didn't grow up that way, and so there a lot of them are very adverse to it, and it just creates this bigger divide, and that's a lot of the who's in charge of the country right now. And I do think that's one of the reasons why there is such this big divide. And I don't want to get on a political soapbox of one side being better than the other, or more correct than the other. I think the only way to go about things is to find the middle ground, because we all have to share this land and this world and this life with each other, and we are all one. So we got to find a way to respect each other, because at the end of the day, this is about not only self-respect, but it's about respecting others around you, women specifically. If I wish that I had had a better male role model in my life growing up, and I wouldn't have made so many mistakes with disrespecting women, disrespecting friends, disrespecting teachers, authority figures in general. And it all boils down to, insecurities. It boils down to negative coping skills due to the trauma that I had, the life that I had, and I just hope that because there are resources out there like, I don't know, this podcast or anything, like go find something that does speak more to truth and to balance and to harmony. And it's free. This podcast is totally free. You don't have to pay. You do not have to pay $49.99 for what you listen to today. So, well,
Yeah, while you were talking, it makes me think how, for me personally, it was so much projecting onto women and onto everybody in my life, that discomfort that I felt inside. And that was one of those coping mechanisms, was projecting that onto everyone around me, because I didn't know how to deal with it.
Yep.
And like we've said, that older generation, vulnerability meant you're weak, you're not a man. And it's like, looking at it now, as that's the what everybody needs is vulnerability to be themselves. Yep. Instead of building up that wall. And it's like, vulnerability is like, oh, I'm unprotected, like the world's gonna attack me. But it's like, once you're vulnerable with who you are, it's like, it's your superpower.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because that's who you are. It's like, you're vulnerable enough to be yourself, then none of this shit can bother you. None of this manosphere shit can even affect you. And that's what we want these young men to realize, is the power lies within you, and it's been there this whole time. It's not in these influencers and these douchebags that are telling you abuse women and, oh, if you have sex with all these different things. And it's like, they're just distracting themselves from being vulnerable with the bigger and bigger distractions. And we see it for what it's worth. And it's like, we want these young men to, because like we said, we know what it's like to be influenced by shitty people and stupid things. And like I said, we look back now and it's like, God, we were stupid.
Yeah, so dumb. I know. And I wish I had an older me that I could have spoken to. You go through a lot of this work and you talk to your inner child a lot, and it's like, you can't go back in time. You can comfort them now. You can show them the way now, but you can't go back in time and change things. And that's where the releasing of toxic shame comes in. And the reason I say these things is so that young men today who are getting wrapped up in the manosphere or are thinking about it, that's all it leads to, is toxic shame, is to, self-loathing, negative coping skills, bad relationships, across the board. It could be with friends, could be with partners. And you don't want to go down that route. You really don't. And there are other ways to find your people and your authentic self. And well, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I really, really thank you for joining me today and being vulnerable. If it's okay with you, because this has been such a heavy conversation, and a good one, but a heavy one, I've got a quick little game that I figured we'd kind of sum some of this up for. Make it as simple as possible for the quick gratification kids of today. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and a simple yes or no, unless you want to elaborate, but a simple yes or no will suffice, okay? So I'm going to describe some people for you. Former kickboxers and reality TV personalities. One was on Big Brother and the other was on some fucking show called Shipwrecked. In 2015 they fled to Romania after allegations of human trafficking and sexual assault, and they were arrested in 2022 and are awaiting extradition. Does that sound like people you would want to pay $49.99 for life advice?
Oh, at least.
No,
absolutely not.
I'm guessing that's a no. Okay, sounds good. Yep. Former Homeland Security agent and day trader who was officially classified as a male supremacist hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center Civil Rights Organization. They were permanently removed from YouTube in 2023 for repeated violations of hate speech and harassment. Besides YouTube, they've been censored across nearly every platform they've been on and have had several student protests during speeches they've given in college campuses. Does that sound like somebody you'd want to pay $69.99 a month for life advice?
I don't know. He seems like a fun guy. No.
Yep. Okay, great. Former gamers on YouTube and Twitch that were both permanently banned from the platforms for hate speech, such as homophobic slurs, defending white nationalists, for promoting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and for platforming white supremacists. They are also under investigation for promoting unregulated gambling to minors, some of whom are not even teenagers yet. Does that sound like somebody you want to pay $99.99 for life advice to?
Oh, is that it?
Sign you up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one last question. Should you come back and watch another episode of Murga the Podcast?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the right answer.
And it's free too?
It's free. You don't even have to pay anything for it. You literally just have to listen to me talk and great guests like yourself. Dustin, this has been a lot of fun. Great to see you again. I'm hopeful that we will have another one of these great conversations one day, sometime sooner than later. And
absolutely.
Any parting words of wisdom?
I appreciate you having me on here. Thank you for being vulnerable with me and being a part of my life and being one of those men in my life that I can look up to and share things with, and helping me become myself. And yeah, I love you.
I love you too, man. And it's funny because I can see the uncomfort, happening in real time when you're saying that stuff. But that's the whole point, is you're willing to go there and you have the strength to go there, and that is real strength, and that is real security, and that's what masculinity is all about. Fuck this manosphere.
Real.
That's right.
Exactly.
Thank you again, Dustin, and thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you did, like it, comment, share it with somebody else who you think might like it. I'm trying to grow the channel. I've got a goal of getting to 100 subscribers by the end of the month, and any support that you'd be willing to give would be much appreciated. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Murga the Podcast. It's so true. There is anything you want all of the time, and how dare you for slowing down for 1 second to see if it's even something you want to pay.
There's so much cool shit to see. Like, don't slow down.
You might miss out on the next cool thing that you can pay.
Yeah, what's next?